They told me to stay out of it, that I didn't understand street work. By the time Internal Affairs pinged the patrol unit's bodycam logs, my quiet upload had already done its job. "You don't understand street work," he barked. "You're not one of us." The captain didn't look up from his desk. His knuckles were white around the coffee mug, the heat long gone. I stood there in silence, half sinking into the cracked floor tile, watching the steamless ceramic tremble in his grip. He didn't ask why I'd stayed late the night before. He didn't mention the incident log, the clipped radio call, or the way my name appeared in the patrol unit dispatch record at 0347 right after the raid. He only saw a rookie in her pressed blues, too eager to please, too soft to handle the ugly heat of asphalt justice. But I wasn't here to please anyone. Outside, the bullpen buzzed in a low mechanical hum. Keyboards, printers, the hiss of an ancient coffee machine trying not to die. I could hear Corporal Dykes arguing with HR about his sick days again. Someone shouted about a jammed copier. Normal things, office things, the kind of noise that makes injustice easier to ignore. I stepped forward and slid the thumb drive across his desk. He raised one eyebrow. "What's this?" "Pre-raid footage," I said. Bodycam, external alley camera, time-stamped, labeled. "From who?" "Myself. I ran a secondary sweep, per Directive 5.2 on warrant execution protocol. I logged it in the system." The pause that followed was long enough to breathe an entire shift into. I could hear my pulse ticking in my throat. "You logged this under your name?" he asked flatly. "Yes, sir." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was loaded. He picked up the drive, turned it between his fingers, and let it clink onto a folder without opening it. "Dismissed." I left his office before I could say something I'd regret, before I could show how hard my hands were shaking, not from fear, but fury. The teenager had screamed once. Just once. That part wasn't in the official footage, but I'd caught it, from the alley cam, from the echo that bounced off the fire escape. That scream hadn't made it into the patrol unit's incident log. Neither did the officer who had pulled him too hard, or the one who smirked as the boy's mother begged them to stop. By noon, the DOJ alert pinged my department email. Subject: Internal investigation. Use of force. During pre-authorized raid, my name wasn't mentioned, but I knew exactly which drive they'd seen. And I knew this wasn't over. They thought I'd look away like everyone else, but some things once seen can't be unseen. And now? The clock was ticking. They called it collateral protocol deviation. I called it a cover-up with an Excel file and a signature. It started quietly, too quietly. An internal file vanished from the shared drive. Not deleted, just gone. The entry that once documented the patrol unit's route timestamp had been replaced by a string of zeros. The file had no name, no author, no trace in version history. I stared at the empty cell in Excel for 5 full minutes, the silence around me louder than sirens. My heart thudded once, then twice like a warning. Then I heard the email ping. From HR compliance subject, administrative coordination check-in. Message: please attend a brief Zoom session at 15:30 regarding file audit irregularities. File audit, not conduct, not misconduct. Audit. They weren't coming after the ones who'd yanked the boy by the collar in front of his mother. They were circling the one who logged the footage. Me. I joined the Zoom 3 minutes early. The HR officer wore the same expression I'd seen her give rookies who used the wrong printer tray. Polite, empty, paper thin. "We're noticing discrepancies in file routing," she said, "particularly with shared folders and restricted documentation linked to last week's incident." My camera was on. Theirs wasn't. I nodded, kept my hands folded, and said only, Everything I uploaded is backed by timestamps and bodycam sync. I've retained personal backups for internal integrity purposes. That changed something. A flicker. She adjusted in her chair. You retained copies? I did. Silence. Thank you, she said. And just like that, the Zoom ended. By sunset, 2 new things happened. First, the teenager's family had filed a formal complaint with the Department of Justice. Second, the internal file I had backed up disappeared again, from my drive this time, except I wasn't careless. I had mailed a copy of the original footage to myself. Encrypted, time-stamped, subject line, if you're reading this, I didn't blink first. At 03:12 a.m., I was woken by a call from a blocked number. This is internal oversight. We're reviewing the pre-raid footage. Do not delete any related correspondence. You're instructed to remain accessible until further notice. No, thank you. No, you did the right thing. But they were watching now. And I wasn't the only one who had seen the footage. They thought deleting files could erase what happened. But you can't unhear a scream, and the DOJ doesn't knock twice. If you've ever been the only one to speak up when everyone else stayed quiet, stick around. What happens next changes everything. Truth doesn't delete itself. You don't get it, Officer Valdez said, his voice low. This isn't about right or wrong anymore. It's about survival. The hallway was empty, but it felt crowded with everything unspoken. The fluorescent light above us buzzed like a mosquito in heat, casting sickly yellow shadows over the bulletin board, plastered with outdated memos and a crooked, zero-tolerance poster. Valdez wasn't a bad guy. He just played by different rules, the kind that kept you from losing your pension. But the moment I mentioned the raid again, his eyes shifted. He leaned in, whispering like we were back in high school trying not to get caught. Your footage didn't just rattle the captain, he said. You lit a fuse you can't put out. By morning, 2 detectives from Internal Affairs were sitting at my desk, scrolling through a printed version of the incident log with red marks like blood smears on every page. Explain this entry, one of them said, tapping at a timestamp that had been altered since the original upload. I didn't touch that line, I said, and I have the audit trail to prove it. He smirked. Then maybe your keyboard has a ghost. The other one stayed quiet, flipping through a manila folder stamped DOJ Active Review. I caught the edge of a memo inside, just enough to see my name printed at the top. No title, no rank, just Myers, L, in all caps. That meant I was no longer just a witness. I was a variable. In the break room, I overheard 2 sergeants whispering. One of them, Ruiz, mentioned reputation control and preemptive HR transfer. The word liability stuck in my brain like a splinter. I wasn't being ignored. I was being boxed in. Later that afternoon, I found a new post-it stuck to my locker. You're either blue or you're through. No signature. I peeled it off and folded it into my pocket. I knew where the raw drive backups were stored, the physical ones, the ones HR didn't know I had, tucked behind the old evidence locker past the forgotten boxes of 2003 narcotic seizures. I took the footage and walked it across the street. The DOJ satellite office had no badge reader, just a receptionist with sharp eyes and a clipboard. I need to log a chain of custody override, I told her. Pre-authorized DOJ internal oversight. She barely blinked. You're not the first. I froze. Excuse me? She handed me a form. You're the 3rd officer this week. Street work's messy. But something about this raid? It stinks. So, I signed the override form. I gave them the drive. And for the first time since the raid, I let myself breathe. But that night, when I returned to the precinct, my key card didn't work. No warning, no email. Just a red light, blinking like a threat. They always say the system protects its own. What they don't tell you is how fast it spits out the ones who ask questions. I stood outside the precinct door, the red light of the key card reader flashing steady. indifferent. My breath clouded the glass as I leaned in, waiting for the second beep. It never came. No access. Just like that, I was frozen out. Behind the tinted glass, I could see movement, silhouettes pacing, coffee mugs raised in casual conversation, someone laughing near the HR printer. The world kept turning. Mine had just slammed shut. No email, no suspension notice, not even a memo. But by now I understood. When the building stops recognizing you, the people inside soon follow. I made a call to dispatch. Routine, dry voice. Badge 94816, access malfunction. Can you confirm my status? Click. Silence. Then, badge status reads, internal hold. Internal hold? That wasn't a thing they told us about at the academy. It wasn't in any training manual. It was the kind of term that lived in whispered hallways and unofficial Zoom chats. Do you have any further questions? The dispatcher asked, robotic. I hung up. By evening, the whispers turned into silence. The group chat I was part of, Patrol West, weeklies, vanished from my phone. Even the captain's last passive-aggressive broadcast about ink toner abuse was gone. I'd been ghosted, officially unofficial. I tried logging into my department email. Locked. I checked the internal portal. Deactivated. Even my printer code had been revoked. It was more than exclusion. It was erasure. I sat in my apartment, the city bleeding light through blinds, and opened the only file they hadn't touched, my original handwritten raid notes. Names, times, screams, and one line that I'd underlined twice. Officer Daniels grabbed the minor before clearance was confirmed. That line had disappeared from every digital record. But I still had the paper, and someone else had seen it too. The next morning, a brown envelope slid under my door. Inside, a printed screenshot, bodycam time-stamped 04.12. The boy on the ground, face turned, Daniels' hand gripping his hoodie. Below the image, in black Sharpie. He lied under oath. No return address, no explanation. Just truth. And a target freshly painted on my back. In this place, the truth doesn't set you free. It puts you in someone's crosshairs. By dawn, I'd memorized the photo, every shadow, every angle, the cracked pavement under the boy's elbow, the blurred glint of the patrol SUV in the distance, and the unmistakable insignia patch on Daniels' sleeve. It was damning. But more than that, it was real. I slipped the image into a plain folder and tucked it beneath my jacket. If someone was watching, I wasn't going to make their job easy. At the DOJ field office, I met with Special Investigator Carlin Go, a woman with steel-gray eyes and a voice like cold glass. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You've been flagged," she said, flipping through a printed incident log. Internals calling it insubordination. Procedural defiance, a term that doesn't even exist in protocol. "They're burying me." She looked up. "No, they're circling the wagons." Then she slid a copy of the same image across the desk. "This landed anonymously in our inbox yesterday, from a server tied to your precinct's print queue." My pulse ticked upward. "I didn't send it," I said. She nodded. "I know, but someone in your house wants this exposed and wants you to carry it." That night, I found my apartment door unlocked. Nothing was taken, nothing moved. Except for one thing. The folder was now on my kitchen table. Opened, and next to it, a single page from an internal memo. If Myers continues contact with DOJ oversight, initiate Phase 3. No signature, no header, no department, just a thin red stamp at the bottom. Do not email, hand deliver only. I had seen enough phases to know what came next. Not a suspension, not a transfer, something quieter. I called Valdez. He didn't answer. I tried Ruiz, voicemail. Even Dykes, the loudmouth from HR, was silent. The precinct had gone radio dead. Until 2:37 a.m., when a burner number lit up my screen. I answered on the first ring. A voice, female, steady, spoke one sentence. "There's more on the internal server. Look for the folder marked Training Materials, Batch 47. Password is your badge number reversed." Click. I didn't sleep, because if that folder held what I feared it did, the raid wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a template. The folder was labeled like it meant nothing. Training Materials, Batch 47. But inside it, a blueprint for betrayal. I accessed the server through a forgotten terminal in the Community Outreach Annex, an old desktop no one had used since the summer interns left. Dust lined the monitor. The login still worked. The internal file system loaded slowly, like it knew it wasn't supposed to reveal what came next. Under Training Materials, Batch 47, was a string of video files, all with dates, all from previous raids, all tagged with the same operation number, all missing from the official incident logs. I clicked one at random, a teenager shoved against a chain-link fence, a woman screaming off-camera, a patrol unit standing in frame, passive. Same officer, same tactic, same smirk. I sat back, bile rising. This wasn't a fluke. It was protocol dressed in gray areas. It was abuse with a training badge. And worse, there were sign-off sheets, scans of internal approval, each marked with digital signatures from supervisors I knew. Some still on the floor today, some who'd smiled at me in the hallway. This wasn't street work gone sideways. This was by design. I printed only one frame from the clearest video. A young boy, hands behind his back. The timestamp matched the raid log from 6 months ago, except that log said no civilians present. I attached the image to an email draft. Subject: request for immediate oversight audit. Pattern of misconduct, suppressed footage. Recipients: DOJ internal oversight, DOJ public relations, and, impulsively, one national investigative reporter I followed online but never met. I hesitated, then I hit send. The response came faster than I expected. By noon, my phone lit up with a new notification: DOJ emergency hold notice. All internal footage and documentation related to Operation Batch 47 now under federal review. Officers involved are restricted from field duty pending investigation. My name wasn't mentioned, but I was still watching, still awake. At 6:03 p.m., a new email landed in my inbox from noreply@justice.gov. Subject: case opened, Federal Oversight Review, Officer L. Myers. One line in the body: maintain digital and physical security of all materials. You are under protection. But protection isn't trust. Protection is a warning with a smile. And someone at the precinct wasn't smiling anymore. They didn't just want me out. They wanted me erased. The silence that followed the DOJ's emergency hold was louder than any siren. No one called, no one texted. Even the air felt like it held its breath around me. But the next shot didn't come from the precinct. It came from my bank. "Hi, this is Lisa Myers," I said into the receiver. "I just noticed my paycheck hasn't been deposited." A pause, keys clicking. "I'm sorry, Officer Myers," the voice said, suddenly cautious. "Your account is under review due to employment verification failure." "What?" "The department listed your badge status as inactive pending administrative review. That triggered an automatic freeze on your direct deposit." I hung up before I said something that would get me flagged twice. No paycheck, no badge. But not fired. Worse, they were slow dripping me out of existence. Back at my apartment, I found the second envelope. This one was blue, no address, just a printed screenshot from my DOJ email thread. So someone was monitoring federal communications now. Below the image, another Sharpie message. "This ends one of two ways. Pick." I didn't sleep. I packed instead. 2 flash drives labeled and encrypted, one for the DOJ, one for the media, if it came to that. I stashed them separately, one in the battery compartment of an old radio, the other duct-taped under a drawer. Paranoia doesn't make you wrong. Sometimes it keeps you breathing. By dawn, the air had changed. My neighbor knocked, pale. 2 men were asking about you. Suits. Said they were from HR. She looked shaken. But HR doesn't usually carry sidearms. I closed the door, locked it twice. Then I logged into the DOJ portal. A new message awaited. If contact is made by unauthorized personnel claiming DOJ affiliation, do not engage. We have reason to believe local interference is imminent. You are being watched. They didn't say by who. They didn't say what to do next. Just, you are being watched. And just like that, I was no longer dealing with whispers. I was dancing on a wire. There's a moment when fear stops sounding like sirens and starts sounding like silence. I stayed off my usual routes. No precinct streets, no local coffee shop, no eye contact. The city moved like normal, as if nothing was rotting under its polished surface. But I knew better now. The rot wore pressed uniforms and signed things with government fonts. I carried the backup drive with me, sealed in a coffee thermos I never drank from. Call it paranoia or survival instinct. At this point, I couldn't tell the difference. The DOJ hadn't responded to my last message, and the journalist I'd emailed? Radio silence. I tried calling her once, from a payphone in a train station. The number rang, and rang. Then a mechanical voice. This line is no longer in service. Dead. Was it coincidence? Or had someone reached her first? I ducked into a city library and used a public terminal. The DOJ oversight portal was inaccessible. Access denied, security token invalid. Someone had revoked my clearance, but I wasn't locked out of everything. Buried in a digital archive, I found something I wasn't supposed to. An internal notice posted for department eyes only, misfiled under community events. Officer L. Myers is under administrative leave pending conduct review. No correspondence is permitted without HR sign-off. Compliance required. They had cut me loose, officially this time, but they hadn't anticipated I'd still be watching. I sent one last message, not to the DOJ, not to the media, to the City Council Public Accountability Board. Subject line: pattern of misconduct, obstruction, and retaliation. Evidence attached. It was the nuclear option, the one you don't come back from, the one that doesn't keep you safe, but keeps others from dying in silence. I attached 4 files: the original footage, the erased incident log with altered timestamps, the training materials, batch 47 folder, the memo threatening Phase 3. Then I hit send and walked out. The next morning, I saw it, a press release from the DOJ posted at 6:14 a.m. Active federal inquiry launched into misconduct patterns in municipal precinct operations. Precinct 79 placed under temporary oversight. Internal review of all training protocols initiated. No further comment at this time. No names, no glory. But the door was open now, and some ghosts don't stay quiet forever. You think the storm breaks when truth comes out, but sometimes that's just when the winds begin to shift. The day after the DOJ press release, I received no knock, no summons, no apology. Just a letter, folded once, slipped under my door. It was from the City Oversight Committee. Your actions are noted. Your evidence has accelerated proceedings previously stalled by lack of corroboration. This investigation will continue independently of your participation. No offer to return, no question of reinstatement, just sterile gratitude and institutional language. But I wasn't expecting thanks. I wanted impact, and impact had come. By midday, Precinct 79's site was replaced by a splash screen. Page under review, internal access restricted. Officers began turning in their body cams for inspection. Several were reassigned, one quietly resigned. Daniels's name was nowhere in the news. But I saw the footage, and so did they. Later that week, I walked into a corner cafe 2 neighborhoods away. A young woman at the register looked up, blinked, then froze. "You're her." I didn't speak. "You're the one from the footage, the one who sent it." My heart tripped in my chest. "How do you know that?" "My brother was friends with the kid in the raid," she said quietly. "He said someone in uniform actually cared, that it saved him from going back there." I nodded once. "Tell him he's not invisible." I stayed in that cafe for hours. No patrol car followed, no envelope appeared, just coffee and a quiet hum of a world slowly resetting itself. At night, I opened a new document, blank, title, street work, a pattern of consent and silence. If they wouldn't let me wear the badge, I'd write what it meant to carry it right, and everything they'd tried to hide beneath it. Because survival isn't silence, and truth isn't a phase, it's a pulse. And mine was still beating. They erased my badge, but they didn't erase my name. Weeks passed. The city kept breathing, pretending nothing had cracked beneath the surface. The precincts ran their PR campaigns. Patrol cars still cruised. Radios still clicked. But I knew better. I knew which doors stayed locked, which files stayed missing, which officers suddenly had vacation days, indefinitely. And I knew the ones who hadn't expected me to last this long were now the ones not showing up on rosters at all. I started speaking, quietly at first. A college invited me to guest lecture on accountability. Then came a nonprofit, then a podcast episode, anonymous voice modulator, blurred name. But the story was mine. I didn't dramatize it. I didn't need to. I just told the truth. What street work really looked like, who it protected, and who it didn't. One day, I received a plain envelope, inside a single sticky note, in familiar blocky handwriting. "You didn't fold. That's why it worked. No signature, no address. But I knew who it was from. Valdez." He hadn't spoken since I'd been shut out. Not a text, not a call. But that note, it was the first real apology anyone had made. I burned it anyway, because I wasn't keeping souvenirs from that war. Months later, I was offered a role, off the street, out of uniform, civilian oversight coordinator, DOJ funded, full access, real power. I almost said no. But then I remembered the mother's face, the scream echoing down the alley, the smirk of a man who thought the badge gave him the right to disappear people. I said yes, and on my first day, I brought in my thermos, not for coffee. The backup drive was still inside, still sealed, still mine. Because some stories don't end with headlines. They begin with who refuses to be quiet. And I was done being quiet.